For this segment of A Bit of Addison History, I would like to talk about one of the few remaining residences still on Lake Street in Addison. I am referring to the white frame farmhouse at 237 East Lake Street, adjacent to Louis Reservoir. According to museum records, Philippe Strauschild purchased a plot of land from a Frederick Crumweedy at the northeast corner of Lake Street and Maple Avenue in 1855. Reportedly, he paid the sum of $400. Philippe was born in the town of Güstrow in the Mecklenburg area of Germany in 1828. In 1856, he married Marie Dorothea Louisa Buchholz. After their wedding, Philippe constructed this home circa 1857. Their firstborn child, Charles, was born in the house. In the 1860 U.S. federal census, Philippe is listed as living in Addison along with his wife Louisa and two children, Charles 3 and Lizette 10 months. Philippe is listed as a harness maker by trade, and his real estate is valued at $1,400 and his personal estate at $400. In an 1864 Illinois State Business Directory, Strauschild is listed under saddle and harness manufacturers. In the 1870 U.S. federal census, the household is again listed. By this time, daughter Lizette had sadly passed away. Charles, now aged 13, was joined by sisters Jane, 7, and Amelia, 4, and brother Otto, 1 month old. Philippe Strauschild, age 50, died of unknown causes and left the home to his widow, Louisa. His will stipulated the house would remain hers as long as she remained his widow. Otherwise, the home would be left to his eldest son, Charles, for a fee of $1,000. In the 1880 U.S. federal census, Charles is listed as the head of the household, living with his mother and siblings Jenny, 17, Mary, 15, and Arthur, 11, at the house on Lake Street. Charles is listed as a harness maker and apparently had taken over the family business after his father's death. According to museum sources, Louisa remarried around 1883-1884 and left the home in the care of Charles. In 1890, Charles Friedrich Heinrich Strauschild married Ottila Hahn. This photographic cabinet card in the museum collection is marked Strauschild Man and Addison, Illinois, with no other identification. It is likely, however, that this is the wedding photograph of Charles and Ottila, based on dating clues from the clothing that they are wearing. After his marriage, Charles bought the home from his mother for the sum of $1,000 as provided for in his father's will. In the 1900 U.S. federal census, Charles, now 42, is listed as living in the Addison home with his wife Ottila and children Herbert Carl, 8, Walter Friedrich, 6, and daughter Cornelia. In addition to his harness business, Charles worked as an undertaker. He served as Addison village clerk and trustee from 1887 to 1888, was a justice of the peace, served on the board of the Chicago and Elgin Electric Railroad, was a World War I registration official, and an election judge. By the 1920 U.S. federal census, Charles is still residing in the home with his wife and daughter. His occupation is then listed as an insurance agent. In the 1930 Greater Chicago magazine, Strauschild is lauded as the oldest living resident of Addison at age 73. In the U.S. federal census of that year, Charles is listed as living in Addison with his wife, Tilly, his son, Walter, and his daughter, Nellie Pauls, and his granddaughter, Marilyn Pauls. Charles died in January of 1939 at the age of 81. He is buried in St. Paul Lutheran Cemetery in Addison. Charles's son, Herbert Carl, studied law at Northwestern. By the 1920 U.S. Census, he had set up his own independent household in Addison with his wife, the former Lulu Fotenhauer, and his daughter Elizabeth. From 1923 to 1927, he served as the village clerk of Addison. Starting in 1930, he began his long tenure as Addison village attorney. His annual fee was mostly $100, although he reduced it to $50 from 1933 to 1936 due to the local economy during the Great Depression, according to village ledgers. His home was located at 109 East Lake Street in Addison. By this time, another daughter, Elaine, had joined the household. In addition to his village responsibilities, Strauschild was employed by the Rathje, Hinckley, Barnard, and Culp Chicago law firm, which was based at 100 West Monroe Street in Chicago. He died on September 19, 1946, at the age of 54, and is also buried in St. Paul Lutheran Cemetery in Addison. Herbert's younger brother, Walter, listed his occupation as a bank clerk for the Chicago City Bank and Trust Company on his World War I registration paperwork. He was inducted into the Army on March 30th, 1918, and based at Camp Grant near Rockford. According to family, he never saw action overseas and was honorably discharged on November 26, 1918. By the 1930 census, he is listed as single and living back at the 237 East Lake Street home with his parents and sister. By the 1940 census, he is listed as still living at the farmhouse with his mother, now a widow, and his sister Cornelia Powells and her children. Apparently, he followed in his late father's footsteps and became a local insurance agent. One of his clients was the village of Addison. Walter died October 17, 1986. At the time of his death, he was the oldest living native-born resident of Addison. He is buried in St. Paul Lutheran Cemetery in Addison. The home on Lake Street is currently owned by Marilyn Pauls, daughter of Herbert and Carl's sister, Cornelia Strauschild Powells, who died in 1969. The structure is one of the last remaining examples of the once common mid-19th century vernacular farmhouse architecture style that once dominated DuPage County.